Right.
And that presumably would apply to atoms as well, because one thing quantum theory teaches us is that atoms are constantly living in a world of or subatomic particles, quantum particles. In order to understand them, the only way you can understand them is by understanding them in terms of their potential actions or movements or changes. You have to take into account all the possibilities, all possible movements, actions, or interactions. And that's what gives you the quantum potential or the quantum wave function or whatever. Now, once those atoms come under the influence of a molecular morphic field, or if they're part of a body of a plant or an animal, then they're part of a larger nested hierarchy which restricts all their possibilities and channels them in particular directions, one rather than another. But even at the level of the isolated quantum particle like an electron, there's this realm of possibility, which is the realm in which quantum theory tells us that they actually live. And therefore it seems that this inner life of an atom or a molecule or a crystal or a bacterial cell, this inner life must have as part of its nature the awareness of possibilities, even if it's not continuous awareness, at least at some stages. Like we become more conscious when we have to make major decisions or some surprising thing happens, and if we're just coasting along in a routine way, our level of consciousness is perhaps not as high. So that presumably is something we could say about the inner life of even atoms or molecules.
Well, I like that. And it also implies the possibility of registering. There's a kind of registration that the atom makes at some point as it exists. The whole measurement problem. But existing in that world of possibilities is indeed something that quantum mechanics does teach us, and does give rise, as you know, and with the measurement problem, certain wild things like the many worlds hypothesis, where all of them come to be. But I like that notion. I think it's a good way for us to imaginatively project ourselves into the protospace that is the interior of subatomic events. And that is, it just seems to be the structure of this universe that with the Big Bang, it blew into existence, it had interiors and exteriors, and it had singulars and plurals. And I believe that morphic fields is a very reasonable explanation for connecting many of those. In the Vedanta version, again, remember what you basically have is a gross body, and the gross body is essentially the four forces that are known now: strong, weak, nuclear, gravitational, magnetic. And then subtle bodies and subtle energies. Now, one of the sort of semi-hot topics in almost conventional science is a biofield, or the whole play that electrical forces have to do with living entities. And, of course, a biofield is very attractive as one type of morphic field, because it would not only be so by analogy, but would actually be a field that is playing a part in the growth and development of human and all living tissue. And, of course, there is an energy medicine based on that, and healing can be quickened using certain electrical fields. But that would be the edge of subtle energy for the traditions. And it means that it also then supports a consciousness that's not confined to the merely waking world. And so the three major states, actually have four states, are waking, dream, deep sleep, and then the witness, and then actually a fifth state, which is non-dual. And these five states are present in basically all sentient beings, according to Vedanta, in some form. Now, I think that might be pushing it, but it's certainly present in mammals and certainly present in humans. And these essentially five states, the first three states are the major manifest realms. The witness being unmanifest, being pure emptiness, being Atman, that is without qualities, and then non-dual is the union of that empty consciousness, empty witness, with all forms, gross, subtle, and causal. But in the manifest domain, and if individuals are wondering what morphic fields have to do with spirituality and have to do with manifest and unmanifest, basically the manifest realm is held together by morphic fields. And in Vedanta, it's much more accurate to think of body minds, that there's a gross body mind, a subtle body mind, and a causal body mind. And the body mind is basically the state of consciousness, and the state of consciousness is supported by a particular energy, a particular field. And so they have gross fields, subtle fields, and causal fields. supporting a spectrum of consciousness, getting increasingly subtler until it can transcend all of those states and rest as infinite spirit. So, in a sense, what we're talking about is the structure of samsara. And, of course, ultimately, samsara and nirvana are not two. That which is form is emptiness. That which is emptiness is form. And so, in a sense, a satori, a great liberation realization, is a realization of all of these morphic fields are one with spirit. Spirit is not transcendental. It's not in some hidden domain. It's the innermost lining of the manifest, so to speak. And that's the non-dual state. But all of the manifest states are minds indelibly supported by fields. That's a wonderfully attractive notion.
Well, I agree. And I wonder, though, how far one can take the idea of, the inside of things. Because if we take the entire universe, the universe is unified by at least the gravitational field, and probably by other fields too, the electromagnetic field. I mean, the fact we can see distant stars with radio telescopes and things is because we're linked to them through the electromagnetic field over billions of light years.
Right.
So the universe, the observable universe, with its gravitational field and electromagnetic fields, is, if it's a universe, if it's one thing, if it is a unity, then the whole universe must have, as it were, an inside. The whole universe must be a kind of morphic unit. At least it's an organized structure based on fields. Even physics tells us that.
Right.
So then, what would the inside awareness or consciousness of the whole universe be? Would that be the world soul? Would it be, what would it be? A kind of, would it be at a vastly higher level than us? How do you think of that?
Yeah, Vedanta and Vajrayana both kind of essentially agree, and that is that the fourth body, in addition to the three, so the fourth is now underlining the pure awareness, pure Swabhavikakaya, that is one with the manifest domain. And the analogy there is that spirit, you take the sort of the ladder of existence, the ladder of evolutionary unfolding, and a wooden ladder. And spirit is both the highest rung in the ladder, and it's the wood out of which the ladder is made. And so that wood out of which the ladder is made is the suchness or the isness or the thusness of this and every moment, is the sort of inside. And at this point, inside becomes metaphorical. But it is what is meant by the ultimate spirit itself, being both transcendent in the sense of the highest consequent nature of God, as Whitehead might put it, and it is the primordial nature, the absolute thusness out of which everything is made. So it doesn't appear in equations. It's not on one side of the fence or the other. It's not literally unmanifest versus manifest. It's the isness of both of those, the suchness or the thusness of both of those. And that is sort of how spirit is conceptualized. It takes care of both the transcendental component, being, in a sense, completely transcendental to what's appeared, although it embraces what has appeared. But then it's also not any one particular thing or even the sum of things, but just the thusness of things, the suchness of things. And it doesn't give us much help in looking at interiors. I think your quantum view is as good a start at looking at those as anything. Now, and it's careful that we distinguish this, in a sense, from big mind and not get big mind caught up in quantum events. Because, again, big mind is the same thing as non-dual. It's the same thing as the suchness. Everything that's arising is arising as a play of big mind. But that means, again, it's not inside or outside, and it's not itself singular or plural. It's radically unqualifiable, including that statement. But that's what is realized with a satori, or a non-dual realization, is the one taste of everything that's arising. But we don't take that one taste literally, as if it can show up in an equation, or it's not a quantum field itself, because that would differentiate it from something else, and it's simply not set apart from anything. It's the very, very isness of everything that's arising.